it's a fluid situation. We'll deal with it day by day. We're pleased with the weekend, pleased with the guys that we added, and we're looking forward as we turn the page into May.
Charles Robinson from Yahoo, as with every major NFL story, was all over the Baker Mayfield trade discussions with the Carolina Panthers. Did not materialize. Panthers went with Matt Corral out of Ole Miss. Baker Mayfield is still a Brown. Andrew Berry says it's fluid. What are the realistic odds that Baker Mayfield is actually still on the roster in 2022? Because if I'm Baker Mayfield, Charles, and I know it's easy to say because it's not my money, I'm taking a pay cut, I'm begging, I'm writing a letter, I'm doing whatever it takes to get my ass out of Cleveland and get to Seattle. Because, ain't a lot of spots for Baker Mayfield in 2022, and we ain't even got to the 2023 draft yet. Where is he going to play if not Seattle? He can't stay in Cleveland, can he?
Well, I mean, they're prepared to take him into the season. They're prepared to try and, make this come back together. That's not, I mean, it is dicey, but the problem is, I don't know that Seattle's really all that hot on it. I don't think I think Seattle's approach to it will be the same as what Carolina's approach to it was, which is, hey man, you pay the vast majority of the salary and we'll flip you a late pick and, we can be done with it. But the problem with that approach is, and I think Carolina, that was part of the problem. There were a few different spitballed scenarios over a 2-day span. Some interesting stuff, some players involved at one point, other picks. It wasn't really simple. But the thing was, it was such a spitballed conversation between Carolina and Cleveland that it never really got very far down the road, even to the point where they could drill down hard on the money. But what was clear about the money was that Carolina was approaching it the way I think Seattle would, which is you pay 13, 14, 15 million, we'll take Baker and we'll kick you a late round pick. Well, if you're Cleveland, that means you're just buying a late round pick for $15 million. Why, that doesn't make any sense. You might as well see if you can carry him and wait and see if something else unfolds, meaning either there's a quarterback injury or, maybe somebody stumbles really badly in camp, doesn't look good. Who knows? Maybe Drew Lock struggles, a lot in camp, and that makes Seattle think twice about it.
Well, that was where I was going to go. I mean, look, for Baker, I just feel like take it in your own hands. Again, easy for me to say it's $18.8 million guaranteed for him. But in order for the long play, restructure your contract, dude. You can't just sit there and collect money.
It would have to be a lot of money, though, Mike. It would have to be.
Yeah. Oh, you have to come down to
Yeah, I mean, he's not going to, if he says, hey, I'll take a $3 million, $4 million, $5 million pay cut, that's not getting him off the roster. That's not going to cut it. There's no way. I mean, it's got to be a considerable amount of money. Now, the one thing I could have seen happening is, say Carolina, or even Seattle, let's say moving forward. Say Seattle says, hey, you know what, we're willing to pay 8. And the Cleveland Browns say, okay, well, we're willing to pay 5.
We'll pay 4. Okay.
Or 4. Right? Okay, we'll say 4. Let's just say 4.
Yeah.
And so then at that point, it's okay, Baker, do you want to restructure and knock $6 million off so we can make this happen? That's different. That's a scenario where if two teams start to talk and it gets close, then maybe Baker can be a part of it and kick in some money and try and get out.
I just like to see him do it and not just be stuck with golden handcuffs. I mean, just for his sake, I'm not the biggest Baker Mayfield fan, but just the idea of him being held as a fallback or a side piece to Deshaun Watson in Cleveland, he needs to do better for himself. But real quick, is Seattle serious? Is Seattle, are they just looking ahead at 2023? Is Seattle really about to roll with Geno Smith and Drew Lock?
I think as far as the draft pick players that were there, they were none of these guys is better than Drew Lock. None of these guys has more talent, brings more to the table than Drew Lock brings to the table, which is why they did not select Malik Willis or anyone else that they had an opportunity to take in this draft. Now, Baker's a different, that's a different animal. If it gets to the point where they feel like a lot of the money is going to be eaten by someone else, I do absolutely think they would be interested. But the one thing about Seattle is they have to get over the assumption that the Browns are going to cut Baker. That's not happening. The Browns are not cutting Baker Mayfield. They owe him the money. So they're not going to cut him and then let him go, on a free agency tour. They'd be just basically paying him to go play somewhere else. That's not going to happen. And the one thing I will say about the Browns too, I'm like, man, this is an awkward way to play this. Couldn't this get really toxic? All these different things. Baker has to be careful about what he does moving forward, because there is conduct detrimental, and you can forfeit guaranteed money if you do something that the team can fit into that conduct detrimental box. Yeah. He hasn't done that yet, so and he can't sit. Right, you can't sit out either. By the way, you can't not show and not play preseason games because you lose money now with the way the CBA is structured.
I'm not the first person to bring this up, but I can understand why other people have brought it up and why it seems such like a natural connection, and that is the Trevor Bauer situation in MLB. They suspended him for 2 years. And if you're in Cleveland, going back to Cleveland, Deshaun Watson, do you look at that and say, wait a minute, this guy, Judge, was throwing some stuff out, wouldn't grant a permanent restraining order, all these things. He was not necessarily arrested or behind bars, and yet MLB has banned him for 2 years. Do you think is there any connection between Bauer and Deshaun Watson, you think?
Only from an optics standpoint. It's not a one-for-one comparison between what Bauer was accused of doing, what Watson was accused of doing. There's a I don't want to be callous here to say there's a sliding scale in terms of assault or domestic violence, but the infractions and even what the two are facing. Again, as you said, Bauer not arrested, not facing civil suits. Watson is facing civil litigation. I think just from an optics standpoint, Major League Baseball, basically the what was put out there and what this reflects for Major League Baseball is, we did the investigation on our own. We're not counting on anybody else. We don't care what law enforcement is or isn't doing. We don't care what the legal system does or doesn't allow. We interviewed the alleged victims ourselves. This is how we feel about this, and this is what we feel like is appropriate. So, that from an optics standpoint, it makes you look at the NFL and go, well, how exactly will they handle this? Are they going to try to say this is a standard 6-game suspension under the CBA rules, the personal conduct policy, because it doesn't have to just be a 6-game suspension? There's other things that the NFL, by the way, and this could play in favor of Deshaun Watson as well as against. The depositions are not under seal, okay, in these civil cases, which means the NFL can conceivably get their hands on the depositions. And Deshaun Watson can essentially be testifying and speaking to the NFL without doing it directly, So that's another piece of information that could play into this. I just think from an optics standpoint, and the NFL does really care about optics, if they feel there's traction there and he should be suspended, and the NFL comes in and says, well, we just think it's like a standard 6-game suspension, there's going to be an element of criticism, and there's going to be some comparison whether it's fair or not.
But if it goes to the next level, it's really bad. We were talking about Baker Mayfield and his next team. Is there a scenario where his next team is his current team? Because if you don't have Deshaun Watson, let's say for 10 games.
Yeah.
Or for the season.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, there's
Baker Mayfield is there.
Look, if Mayfield is, if he's on the roster, okay, and Deshaun Watson ends up, let's say he gets suspended for, let's just say, a season to make it a round square, or a square kind of number. I think there's a conversation that I would think the coaching staff and the front office says, look, this can be your best case scenario here. Okay. If you come and you play well this year, you're going to be a free agent. We're not franchise tagging you. You're going to be a free agent. So basically you're playing right now for your next contract. You're doing the Kirk Cousins. Okay. Kirk Cousins last year in Washington, he knew it. They knew it. That's where it was headed. He was going to be a free agent. And what did Kirk Cousins do? He went and did a big free agency tour. There were a lot of desperate teams for a quarterback, and he turned it into a hell of a lot of money when you look at what he's going to walk away with eventually from the Minnesota Vikings. So I think that's the conversation.
a potential marriage of convenience, in other words, right, Charles? You know, people stay together.
Yeah, I mean,
you know what I'm saying? We're successful together. You need it, I need it. We both need to be married. It's a tax write-off. You know.
Okay, and here's another thing too. Let's be real here, the three of us, right? Let's say Baker Mayfield goes back, you know, keeps a low profile. Deshaun Watson gets suspended. Let's say they're halfway through the season, Baker's balling out. We're all sitting here going, this dude's making himself. He's securing the bag. Like I don't know any other way I would perceive that other than to say this is a growth moment for him. He's showing teams something right now, both character, play. It would be a really good look because it's a really awkward situation.
No, that's professional. That is very professional. Speaking of professional, somebody who may have no choice but to be professional, we'll see how he plays it. Deebo Samuel, who, as you know, shares an agent with A.J. Brown. Maybe that helps that situation, but nothing went down during the draft. How do you see the Deebo Samuel situation resolving itself, if at all?
Yeah, DK Metcalf's agent. Like, you want to talk about having the wide receiver market cornered in terms of potential trades. Look, I think the reason why it happened with Tennessee and didn't happen with the 49ers, it was because Tennessee was reticent to pay the money, okay? Did not want, like, they clearly were far apart on the money. It sounded to me like as much as like $5-6 million apart a year. That's really hard to make that up. And it didn't sound like either side was really interested in budging. The 49ers are different in that I believe they want to pay the money. It's just this unspoken list of things that Deebo wants that is preventing the return from happening. Now we're in a different situation, though, because they can't deal him now. I mean, unless they're going to sit there and go, we're just not going to have an asset on the field. We can't replace him through the draft. Or at least we're not going to have the high picks we would expect. It's funny because I thought it was going to happen to the Jets. I really did. I thought that trade was going to go down. From what I understand, what ultimately kind of scuttled it from San Francisco's end was that the Jets wanted another draft pick asset as well as Deebo if they were going to give up that 10th overall selection. So, look, San Francisco wants a lot for the guy if they're going to let him go. But there's just no inclination that even what they would accept is an indication to teams like the Jets and the Detroit Lions that, they're not really serious about trading this guy because what they want for him outright is more than what was given up for Devontae Adams or Tyreek Hill.
Hey, speaking of the Jets, most pundits, most draft experts and analysts and people who give out grades love what the Jets did. Mm-hmm. How can you not love what Baltimore did? It's Baltimore, for crying out loud, and they happen to nail it, you know? Kansas City. Those are some of the obvious ones based on their credibility, their track record, their body of work, and the actual draft that people love what they did. Can you give us a team that, based on either just your analysis and what you know about the prospects, your knowledge of their roster, especially coupled with free agency, or maybe just people around the league that you talk to that are like, you know what? You know who's not getting enough credit for their draft? This team. This team's flying under the radar. People are sleeping on this team's draft plans.
Man, under the radar. I mean, I don't know if I really.
As much as you could be under the radar. As much as you could be under the radar in 2022. You know what I mean? There's no secrets.
Here was a really interesting assessment. A number of teams were actually really impressed with what the Eagles did because of the fact that it was such a wide picture that they kind of approached this draft with. Like the Eagles sat there and said, okay, we're going to take Jordan Davis. Okay, great. We got that. To get the Kobe Dean where they did, let's see what happens with the medical there. But kind of feeling like they can figure out, the right appropriate slot for him. The trade, okay, like they made like every conceivable move you could in this draft. They went and got the huge wide receiver that they felt like they needed to absolutely have in the fold long term. They went and still have 2 ones. And that's right. Yeah, and that's the crazy thing is that they also focused on 2023 as well. Like they went and made huge moves in this draft, but they made a pretty huge move in next year's draft because we could have 5 or 6 quarterbacks that are worth a first-round pick next year. So not only did they try to say, hey, Jalen Hurts, we're going to do the best we can to improve the defense, give you a bona fide ironclad number 1 wideout. We're going to try and make this work with you.
And a center. And a center to replace Jason Kelce when he retires. Yeah.
And a center, but we're also going to make sure we are preparing, as we should as professionals, for if this doesn't work out, because we're going to know now. Like, we've invested in you now. this is the big step year. And if that doesn't happen, we're going to make sure that we're also okay next year and ready to make moves. It was just a very full picture view that they took. And a number of teams were like, the Eagles, they really kind of pulled out everything out of the bag of tricks. And they looked at it as 2 drafts, 2022 and 2023.
It's we always talk about coaching trees. Maybe we should start talking about GM trees, because we see the Rams and F them picks with Les Snead. Brad Holmes in Detroit, man.
Yeah.
Going from 32 to 12.
Yeah.
To get Jameson, I was loving the aggressiveness of a team that is, let's face it, they're a couple years away from being really good. I like the mentality. What'd you think?
Yeah, well, they swung for the fence twice because they tried to get Debo. Like, they called and they're like, hey, we want to trade for Debo Samuel. Like, they basically stacked 2 options here. They're like, either we're going to go get this guy and we're going to do the mega trade and we're going to pay him this huge contract so that we have this piece in place, or we're going to move up from the bottom of the first round and take a player that we think, once he's healed from the ACL, could be our next, great impact wide receiver. And I mean, I sit there and I think about, like, Green Bay could have done that. Like, there's a number of teams that, really could have addressed wide out and gotten up there before the run happened. And by the way, I think part of the reason why Detroit did that, why they traded to where they traded, was because they were trying to snipe the Eagles. I think Holmes was sitting there going, how he's going to take our guy? Like, we need to get it up in front of this guy. And by the way, he, I don't know, we'll never know for sure if he did, but it's interesting that it was after that deal that Howie ultimately ends up pulling the trigger on acquiring AJ Brown. So it was really aggressive. And I mean, I like it. Like, that's the mentality, as you said, of the organization he came from. Their mentality is just, let's push it all in and see what happens. And I think if look, the Jameson Williams pick, if it works out okay, and they have to focus on quarterback next year, it's going to be really nice to have at least that wide receiver cornerstone. Feel like you've kind of got that in the fold.
Charles Robinson, man, we appreciate you bringing it as always, brother. Take a break, why don't you? Do you have a vacation planned anytime soon? Dawn. Take this man's phone.
It's like 14 lawsuits pending against the NFL right now. It's time to turn my attention to all the litigation and everything else. So no, I'm not even kidding. I'm already thinking about the training camp tour, and that's supposed to be 2.5 months away.
That's why you are who you are. Appreciate you, man. Thank you.
All right, thanks, guys.
All right, Charles. Thanks. Hey, thanks for watching Brother from Another on YouTube. Make sure you hit subscribe before you leave, and be sure to watch us 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Time on Peacock. Appreciate you.